sincerest apologies, dear viewers. That was never happened before. So let us know if you can hear us well now, all of us. If you can see us, that would be even better. I'll just go ahead and give a quick recap on what we started on there. So today we're going to talk about blockchain development, why you should do it, when you should do it, if you should do it, using which tools you should do it. And of course, as per usual, we try to get some knowledgeable people here to teach us and teach you guys about these technologies and what it makes possible. And to that end, we have invited double Aleksi, double the fun. So we have Aleksi S, we have Aleksi M, both avid developers in the blockchain scheme. So won't you, Aleksis, just briefly tell everybody maybe some projects that you're working on, what kind of tools do you like to use? How would you approach this whole topic? Because obviously this is something that is very, very dear to your guys' heart.
Yeah, so hello everyone. I'm Aleksi Meldo. Great to be here on the Konsensus Network show again. I'm the founder and main developer of Bi-Economy, which is a sharing economy app on blockchain. So it's what you would call a distributed app or a D app. And it's currently running on Ethereum blockchain using the Solidity smart contracts. So that's what I'm working on at the moment, and the whole smart contract thing is what interests me most currently in the blockchain development. Oh, and you can get more information about Bi-Economy at Bi-Economy.io.
All right, thank you, Aleksi. Yeah, we're working on several projects with Aleksi, and he's a great guy. What about Aleksi S? Well, you're working on Ethereum mostly, is that right?
Yeah, certainly. I'm Aleksi Suomalainen. I'm currently hosting the Helsinki Ethereum meetup, and I'm running my own software development company, Osibus Ltd. here in Finland. I'm currently developing an LLVM target for the EVM. That means that we could potentially have a compilation system that compiles directly into the smart contract language and use Ethereum itself as a runtime rather than using the local application processors. And to further introduce the target, I think, in my opinion at least, that the current system of development in mobile space, in desktop space, it's way too wasteful. It's going to run. We are going to run out of quite many rare materials soon, and that's going to be a big problem. So that's what I'm trying to fix with my project.
Well, that's very interesting. So kind of like this lean approach, start to take everything extra away and prune things up. I really like that approach. And of course, let's welcome Max once more. Max Hillebrand from World Crypto Network, an awesome guy. And why don't you let everybody know what's your take on blockchain development, and when should we do it and how?
Hey, what's up, Piers? Nice to be back at the Konsensus Network. Always like to intermingle the channels. So World Crypto Network and Konsensus, I do think it's a good fit. Regarding blockchain development, well, the problem is that, first of all, it is software, right? So it's never perfect. Software always has bugs. But the problem is Bitcoin is not just any software, but it's consensus software. So this software leads to a Schelling point, a convergence to one single state of truth. In Bitcoin, it's the most recent block, right? And the problem is that when we have such a consensus critical software, that any change to the software needs to be evaluated quite carefully. Because if it breaks consensus, if there is a split in the network, then the software has kind of failed. So developing on-chain, on the main consensus protocol is really, really critical and difficult. And that's why it is, especially in Bitcoin, always been quite conservative. And having with sidechains a additional layer where it can be experimented upon with changes to the code base without changing the code of the base layer of the parent blockchain, that brings quite a lot of potential with it, including truly permissionless innovation, because you can do quite literally anything you want on top of a sidechain. So seeing this and future development on sidechains and testing out stuff like confidential transactions, like confidential assets, or all the other fantastic innovations, it's going to be quite interesting.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned Shelling Point, so I'm going to turn this into a Shilling Point and remind everybody about our campaign, and also shill this awesome service called Tallycoin. And I do hope you can see my screen now. I'm trying to share the screen over here, and you should be able to see the chat as well. And what we're trying to do here with Tallycoin is basically we set a goal, and our goal is to get better production quality for these streams, and basically get better equipment, microphones and stuff, microphones and cameras. And if you like these shows, and if you would like us to make some more better quality, then you can support us directly by donating Bitcoin to this Tallycoin campaign. You can see it progress throughout the show. If I can figure out how to put on the sound, so you can even hear a little sound whenever there's a donation. So that's a nice way to participate. If you would like to participate in the Konsensus Association in general, you can find that address also in the description. So up to your preference. So much appreciated. Of course, leave some likes if you like what we're doing here, and if you don't like what we're doing here, do remember to leave dislikes, because that's also valuable information to us. So yeah, without further ado, I'm gonna just talk about how I see why I see it important to develop this awesome protocol. And I do think the Shelling Point there was you hit the nail there on the head, and that of course is what John Nash discovered, this kind of game theoretical Shelling points that you can start to analyze how most people will act, and since in the future we are moving towards algorithms and AI taking over of a lot of our jobs, and it will become, to me, obviously clear that we will need a lot of work on how to code morals and these kind of things into smart contracts, because they are going to be taken off of our hands. And I do think that's probably for the better, but it might still not be great for us. But we're not going to, I hope we're not going to turn this into too much of an AI conversation, because we have some videos on those as well. I just wanted to throw it out there because I feel like this is really something that we need to put the information out there. I for one, I'm not nearly knowledgeable enough that I would like to. And just to get the good word out, and we are all pretty much beginners here, even the so-called experts. So to bear in mind, this field has no expert. If somebody tells you that they are expert of blockchain development, chances are they are lying unless they are Satoshi. So yeah, I was just my point of view, and have a nice little jam here. So what do you guys think? What do you guys, Aleksis? You are the developers here, so I don't want to be in here. I listen.
I would like to get to back to the point about the side chains. So one interesting project is the Rootstock project, which brings the Solidity smart contracts to Bitcoin, and that way you can create an app that uses Bitcoin as the currency or medium of exchange. And while I think Ethereum is a great idea, great form, but I think the most where it's gone wrong is the all kinds of tokens and coins that can be now created, like in a matter of minutes. It creates just too much. It's just too many coins and too many projects having their coins. So I believe in a world of simplicity, and that's why we're looking into this Rootstock and using Bitcoin as the medium of exchange in, for example, economy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Aleksi, because the fact that I also don't like Ethereum that much is the simplicity of creating the tokens, but that's just what I would call a side effect, since all of the smart contracts are all of the tokens are also smart contracts because of the way Ethereum works, and it also makes sense in the classical terminology of money, because instead of agreeing upon some goods that you trade with, you agree upon with the bank that the good is of certain value, and that is the contract between you two, even though the bank offers its own arbitration mechanism in between. And certainly I've been targeting my own work in the EVM target to just use the computational systems, because everything else creates way too much trouble. For example, any state storing or anything like that. We can get probably into that one a little bit later. And I don't personally care whether it's EVM or any other language that's going to be ended up used in the distributed execution. I don't care, although it would be nice if the if rootstock would use EVM, or Ethereum would die and then rootstock would be the smart contract execution platform. Even though I'm hosting Ethereum, it's a little bit strange coming from me, but I only care about the computational side, and I've been quite vocal about that in other places as well. So the implementation doesn't matter as long as we just keep going on with the development and improving the platforms as a whole.
Yeah, I too like the idea of a world computer. It's a great idea.
Well, in my opinion, the killer app, so to say, about all these blockchains is money, right? And of course, I, as an Austrian economist, really appreciate sound money. That means a money that is, number one, limited in supply. That means it is rare, right? But more importantly, this supply is unchangeable, unalterable. Just like the gold atoms cannot be changed, and all of a sudden, gold atoms, or just atoms out of nothing, appear to be gold. The same should be the case in a blockchain-based currency, in a true sound monetary currency. We see that with Bitcoin, of course, it is extremely hard to change anything in Bitcoin. And I do think this is good, right? This is good from a monetary perspective. However, as I said earlier, software is never perfect. And that means that we actually do need to make some changes. For example, we saw that with the last bug, right? The possible denial of service and possible inflation bug needed to be fixed. So there was a fast upgrade pushed. Now, this upgrade did not break consensus rules, right? But nevertheless, the update mechanism needs to be implemented. However, again, right, because we want to have these long time horizons, these long planning horizons, it's important that these update mechanisms cannot just simply be done and decided by a central cabal of people, right? That's why it's so important to run your own Bitcoin full, right? Because only then do you really decide if you want to upgrade or not, if you want to change the consensus rules or not. So having a truly centralized and truly peer-to-peer censorship-resistant consensus-based protocol on the base layer that is verified by individual full nodes is really important. What you do on top, well, there's much more leeway, right? There's much more room for collaboration and for innovation because it no longer applies to everyone, right? It is a opt-in system. If I use Bitcoin on-chain, then something like rootstock really doesn't concern me because I only have Bitcoin on-chain and I do not have any rootstock Bitcoin. So that's the beauty of sidechains. They are opt-in and not coercive.
Yeah, that's a good point. But then again, aren't all the protocols opt-in pretty much?
Absolutely. That's the beauty of open source, right? You decide which software you run. So it truly is anarchy in money. There is no ruler. There are no leaders. It's individual nodes, and they decide which software to run and which rules to follow. As a matter of fact, full nodes make the rules themselves. When you compile your full node from source, you decide what rules you want to run, and there are literally an infinite amount of possibilities. But a shelling point, a true emergence of one single point of truth, does happen, and that is, of course, well, for sound money, it is Bitcoin, and for the world computer, it's Ethereum.
There was actually a lot of interest about Liquid in the chat. I was just reading it a little bit here, and I hope you can see the screen as well. So yeah, Liquid is something interesting to me, and I have to admit I really haven't done my homework on that subject, but it seems like it's interesting. And I think they just rolled it out pretty much. So what do you guys think about Liquid? What does it make it? What does it make possible? What's it used for mainly?
I must admit I haven't looked into it yet.
Well, Liquid is the first implementation of the so-called Elements project developed by Blockstream. So that started back in 2014 with the sidechains white paper by a vast amount of people, including Adam Back and Gregory Maxwell, who worked on that. And they basically proposed a mechanism where you can use on-chain Bitcoin, but this entire thing is blockchain agnostic, but just because Liquid is implemented on Bitcoin, let's stick with Bitcoin. So you use on-chain Bitcoin, and you somehow put them into a smart contract, into a locked smart contract. And these Bitcoin are then on-chain locked for an indefinite amount of time. Because they are locked, you can prove this with an SPV proof and simple payment verification proof. And then you can build on top a mechanism where you rely on these locked-in tokens, and you create a one-to-one peg, for example, a liquid Bitcoin. And these liquid Bitcoins then can be used with a new consensus mechanism. For example, the Liquid blockchain relies on a federated, a strong federation for block signing. So there is no longer any proof of work required, but rather a 66% signature from the 23 block creators of the Liquid network. As soon as 66% of these 23 have signed a block, which will happen within 1 minute, it is considered a valid Liquid block. And this is kind of like well, not really a proof of stake. It is something similar, but still different. It is a strong federation. And the Strong Federation white paper got released in 2016, as far as I know, and elaborated on the trade-offs that such a system can have, which are, first and foremost, you have to trust this federation to produce valid blocks. And why would you trust them? Well, because they are reputable and because they are known. These include, for example, exchanges like Coinbase or GDAX or Bitfinex or BitMEX, I think. So there are several different exchanges that are part of this strong federation. And if you trust them to put your Bitcoin on these exchanges anyhow, now you disperse this trust, not just to one exchange, but to, well, 23 of them. So there are trade-offs involved. It is not as trustless as the Bitcoin base layer, but it provides possibilities, like, for example, a shorter block time or stuff like confidential transactions on top.
Well, there you go. Now you know. So that was excellent. That was quite excellent explanation. I was just thinking, this sounds a little bit awfully like an authority or what would, I don't want to say like a union of exchanges, but can someone else join into the federation of the system?
As far as I know, not currently in the Liquid project. You can do your own sidechain within a couple clicks. There are tutorials at elementprojects.org. But as far as I know, in the current model, the set of federation members have to be decided in advance. So in the implementation of Liquid, there are 23 of these federation members. And I do not think that they can be changed, or I'm not certain about that. But again, there are different trade-offs, right? You do trust these exchanges already because you keep your coins in their custodial wallet, and now you just diverse this into several exchanges. And as long as 33% or larger stay honest, they can at least not steal your funds. Right? So these federated signers are especially important for liquidating the liquid Bitcoin back into real Bitcoin, right? Into base layer Bitcoin. That's when you really have to rely on these parties. If here 66% collude or are compromised or just leak their keys, then they could theoretically steal your Bitcoin. So absolutely, there is a trust model involved here. Yes.
I think it sounds pretty similar to the rootstock idea, where you have this one the beg your bitcoins to the side chain, and you then use them in the side chain for the smart contract. So sounds like a similar idea.
So do you guys think it's fair to say that side chains kind of bridge the gap between permissioned and permissionless blockchain? Would that be a fair assessment? If let's say that the main use case for Liquid would be to settle between exchanges, for example, and then people who are already using those exchanges could then be, probably they'll have no problem using this because they are already jeopardizing their keys. Is that did I understand it correctly? So let me rephrase. So basically, if you're using a sidechain solution, that means you are asking a permission to do so from some centralized party. Is that always the case?
I think in root, at least there's some sort of merge mining together with Bitcoin. So there is a consensus mechanism for the rootstock chain.
Well, are you asking for permission? Not really, because inherently these federation members they cannot really deny you access. You simply have to lock up your Bitcoin at one of these federation multi-signatures, and then you can prove that you have locked them up, and then you can use this proof of locked funds to generate liquid Bitcoin. And as far as I know, there is no identity or anything connected to this, and there should not be any way of the federation members to censor this transaction. However, again, when you have 66% of these federation members colluding, they can do pretty much anything, including censoring you and stealing your funds.
Right. So, yeah, okay. Maybe permission was not the correct term there to use. More like, yeah, compromise between and the risk you're willing to take. So yeah, I think I'm okay with that. I really like the idea of side chains, and especially because it brings this smart contract functionality on top of Bitcoin, which is of course at the moment my favorite protocol to use, and to be honest, the only secure and workable protocol at the moment, of course. So let's talk briefly about some other protocols, because this was not supposed to be all about the sidechains, even though that is of course interest. But I think some of the viewers probably are interested also in other protocols. So do you guys have any other protocols in mind that you're looking at, or maybe you're interested in and you want to share some insights?
Well, I've been interested in Neo, which is also a Ethereum type smart contract platform where you can create tokens and dApps. It has a proof of stake algorithm, so it's different to Ethereum in that sense. I haven't yet developed anything for it. I just looked at it. It has the possibility of using various languages for the creation of smart contracts. So it should be more developer friendly than Ethereum. Although Ethereum, the Solidity language, it's not that complicated if you're a developer. So that's one project I've been looking into. Also, disclaimer, I've also invested in the Neo project some money. But anyways, what I've heard that it's also like Liquid, it's a bit centralized. So you have these different nodes, 20 to 30 like master nodes or something around the world that mainly create the consensus mechanism in Neo.
Yeah, that is a good thing, the disclaimer. And I forgot to say in the beginning, like if you're listening into this and do remember that we are all non-zero sum investors, likely in many of the projects that we're talking about could be, and you know, we are all biased. We have our own opinions, so definitely do your own research. Listen to everybody, but follow nobody. And we don't want you to necessarily follow us. We do want you to like this video, and we do like you to subscribe. So in that sense, you can follow us and you should follow us. But definitely don't always do what we say, because we don't know any better. We try to understand it. So yeah, I used to be on Neo as well back in the day when it was still Ant shares. I bought into that, and I did get rewarded on that. So that was a nice experience with Neo for me. And also another thing is that it's a Chinese protocol, which if Chinese government is willing to, if and when a Chinese government is willing to adopt some kind of state cryptocurrency, that could be something that they might be looking at, and that could bring some boost to Neo. But make no mistake, for what I've seen so far, it's far from a decentralized system, and it's well, I think that's ties into this whole Chinese way of controlling things, which of course might not be a bad thing, because if you're creating a centralized service, and oftentimes you can provide much better quality of service with a centralized database solution, for example. And that ties into why rather you shouldn't ask the question why blockchain, you should ask the question when blockchain. So yeah, what do you guys think, when blockchain?
Well, the question is, what do you want to do? I mean, blockchain is just a database. It's quite literally just or even broader speaking, it's a block that is connected to another block. So in speaking like that, even Git, right, the versioning system is a blockchain, because they are hash trees of the different versions. So you can be quite broad in your definition of a blockchain. But limiting it to a decentralized blockchain, well, if it is decentralized, that means that individuals should run the Bitcoin full node and connect to or themselves make the rules, right? So it has to be completely open and permissionless, and of course, open source. And then the question is, what do you need it for? So far, I'm only aware of functioning blockchains that hold an intrinsic asset. So just a dumb number in this database. For example, in Bitcoin, right? It's just the number of Satoshis represented in the unspent transaction outputs, and that's it. There's nothing external. If you have, for example, a database that is tracking stakes, where they were produced and by which cow, and how they were shipped and who did all the controlling. Well, this is external information. And this external information you can put in a blockchain, but how do you know that this external information is correct? And how can you trust the persons who are putting this data in this blockchain? I don't think it's a unsolvable problem, but it's definitely a hard problem. And I don't think that we have yet found a solution to do that. But you know, we never know.
Yeah, it's many of these decentralized apps are just taking an existing thing like, let's say, Uber, and then they just think that we put this on blockchain, so it's gonna be great. It's gonna be, but that I think is the wrong approach, because nobody is going to use the app just because it's decentralized. It has to be better than the actual Uber for the general public to use it. So I don't really think you should put everything on blockchain. Definitely not.
Yeah, I agree as well. Yeah, given that you always need to run some sort of a consensus, that you need to, for example, reward people for reaching the consensus, and then also have people pay for their own transactions. That gets expensive mighty fast, and it doesn't make much sense in the long run, at least. So anything that involves some sort of a reciprocal reciprocal mechanism in creating value, yeah, sure. That's one way to see blockchains, because you are paying to the miners to process your transaction, and the miners also get the block rewards. But you also benefit from a value being transferred to some other public key address or anything other, like stuff like that. So I would rather go from that point of view than just saying, well, we are using blockchain. So, well, you're using blockchain. How do you reward your users when there's more data being transmitted into the chain or anything? So that's my take on the issue.
Right. So we've established that you don't need blockchain in most applications, I would say. In software applications, you can do better with other tools. So I think that's something we can all agree. I think we are all here platform agnostics as well. So we are after the best possible platform. And also, I think we are all agreeing on a pruned system is the most efficient system, is the best system. As well. So I think there's a lot there already, and these a lot of these buzzword salad projects simply don't have legs to stand on. If you try to think, if you do a simple test of asking, like, what am I ever going to use this for, and
Well,
that should tell you. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Aleksi, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we're currently seeing that like the average user amount of Ethereum dApps is like 6,000 users per day or something. So, and most of them are exchanges and gambling sites. So there aren't really a lot of users yet using these applications in the real world.
And then the question is, right, why do you need the decentralization?
Yeah.
In Bitcoin, it's used for censorship resistance.
Yeah.
Why? Because, well, money is censored quite a lot and quite often. So in Bitcoin, these high costs of being censorship resistant and decentralized are justified because money is something that is quite often censored. I have never heard of a case where CryptoKitties has been censored. Well, other than by the unusable system of Ethereum with high transaction fees. But other than that, I don't think that trading cat cards is ever going to be a problem with a big government. Money, especially sound money, they don't like it too much.
Yeah, I think there's also, that's a very interesting point that you bring up, Max, about the CryptoKitties, because that is, I feel, that is the killer dApp in a way. If you think about breaking into mainstream, you do need something like CryptoKitties, maybe something a little bit more sophisticated and maybe something a little bit more useful. But regardless, something that is non-threatening and something that is fun.
And so, easy to use.
Right, easy to. I think the key here is easy to use. Like you said, Aleksi, I think what I really liked about what you said is that it doesn't matter how good your product is. I mean, you have to be in every single way better than the competition. And even then, you will struggle with adoption because people, there's something called network effects, and whatever you're trying to replace has huge network effects. Like, for example, look at fiat money. It has pretty good network effects. I would say you have to. It not only is it you can use it everywhere, but you have to use it everywhere. So massive network effects to take over. So of course it's difficult for a new protocol or to a new app to gain any ground. So you gotta be better in every single way, and even then you struggle to find people. So then yeah, information is key as well. And I do think once you present to people a better way of doing a thing that they want to do, they need to do, they will switch to it, but it will take some time and it will take some education, and that's why we are here. So guys, what do you guys think? What is the killer dApp? If we're not talking about, of course, a Bitcoin as money is pretty killer and pretty good application there. But let's think about a little bit more in detail of these decentralized applications. What would be a killer decentralized application that actually can benefit from blockchain?
Well, I think it's, well, this is a bit, well, that's what we are developing basically, but for me it would be an easy way to actually use Bitcoin to trade for products and services. So, and that's what economy is about, but that's just my point of view of a killer dApp.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. That's why we are developing it. That's our main project. So, of course.
And regarding CryptoKitties, I think that was a pretty good start because, well, we wouldn't have app stores without Angry Birds, and that thing got everything started pretty much back in the day. Well, it's been a long time, but it's still. I still remember Angry Birds very well. So just wait for something to really do the trailblazing for the technology. Bitcoin has already done quite a lot of it, but it still lacks in the user experience, at least in some wallets or stuff like that. Users don't need to know about their private keys or what the wallet means or what are those weird long addresses.
Yeah, that's
they just want to trade money.
Yeah, that's one important aspect. Like, I try to always look from the perspective of, like, would someone that is not so technical, who maybe knows how to use smartphone apps, how could he or she use Bitcoin or blockchain applications? And at the moment, it's too confusing for, let's say, a traditional normal person that you talk about wallets and private keys and addresses and MetaMasks and dApps and sending tokens, or like everything. It goes way beyond the normal users. Like, they just want a simple thing, you know.
Yeah.
Exactly. And decentralization, again, has its costs, right? And if you want to make a program, a app that does not necessarily have to be decentralized, but you still do it, these costs are going to make a worse product, right? If you have a decentralized Uber, for example, which in most cases does not make sense because Uber is not centralized, other than in Germany, or censored, then you have additional costs. For example, like, you have to have a much more sophisticated reputation market, and you have to make sure that it is truly trustless and truly decentralized, that the code is being worked on by people who are intrinsically motivated. That doesn't really happen overnight, and it's really is not easy, and it's really expensive. So it is a tough choice of doing a decentralized thing over doing a centralized thing. Oftentimes it is justified, but more often I don't think it is.
What about digital ID? I keep hearing about that, like digital ID would be some kind of a killer app for blockchain, and I'm not sure if it really is. What do you guys think?
Well, given that it would require the user to really map his or her key pair into his own or her own identity, I don't think that that hasn't really worked that well in the modern world, at least in the context of like HTTPS sites, TLS, those sites that use TLS. So that still relies on a centralized authority to get your certificates, and well, it gets complicated. So I would not use it as is, at least. So because it goes a little bit against the idea of the distributed or decentralized, whichever. So there will always be some sort of an authority to pin you onto a certain key pair. Even PGP hasn't solved this yet, even though they have their key reputation systems, but nobody really cares about that much. You can sign each other's key pairs as much as you want, but if you communicate with someone who has a negative score on their reputation of the key, how are you going to know that if you don't really know about the PGP that much?
That's interesting. And what you brought about the reputation system, which is, like you said, generally accepted form, generally accepted way to make sure that you can trust somebody, another individual online, which I think it's an interesting thing. And I do think that it could pair with blockchain as well. But I started to think about ID in a different way, because I'm an advocate of freedom and privacy. So I'm thinking about IDing people as, let's say, unique users, rather than just, you know, having all their birth dates and birth name and all this very personal stuff that is ultimately irrelevant information, right? I mean, I don't care if I want to buy a stuff from a stranger online. I don't care what their name is. I don't care if they are married or whatever. I don't need any of that information to make a informed decision on the purchase. What I do need is the reputation. So I think if we can find some kind of a way to make sure that there's no Sybil attack, which means that somebody can make multiple accounts and attack the system, that you can reliably identify unique users without knowing any other information, that they are in fact a unique user. And that, I think, could be immensely useful. Do you guys have any ideas on that? And after that, I want to go a little bit to the chat to get some questions. So if you guys have any more questions there, I have a good one here. So we're going to do all of those at once. And while you're at it, smash that like button. But what do you guys think?
Well, you know, the Bitcoin is fundamentally not crypto anarchy, because crypto anarchy, per definition, means that there is no linkability to the person who has done the action. For example, if you have PGP encryption, like Aleksi spoke about earlier, there is no link between, or no provable link to the person who has done the signing, other than when he reveals the keys, right? So having this unlinkability, especially for future references, kind of destroys reputation markets, because we can only, you can only destroy historical reputation, but you cannot destroy future reputation, because you can just as easily spin up a new pseudonymous account or a complete anonymous account and have a new set of reputation from that point forward. I highly suggest you all to go out and check the previous talk from Smuggler at this year's Hackers Congress at Parallel Me Police, which really went into the details of what crypto anarchy truly is and what these amazing implications are. For example, that reputation markets are no longer feasible. So it's interesting to see where a true world of crypto anarchy with true fungibility and unlinkability might lead us.
Double Aleksi, what do you guys think about this decentralized ID? I mean, my take on the decentralized ID.
Yeah, I think it could be an application that works very well on blockchain, like decentralized, that you could have your ID and it could be verified and everywhere, and that is you. And well, that's one idea I like using blockchain for. Like your reputation could be there and everything.
But then like the other Aleksi said, you would have to have a way to input those informations.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of messes the whole thing up, because you then have to trust the user to correctly input it, and then making decisions based on that. If it's a legit person, then that's going to, I think that's not going to work super well.
What about some sort of link to the government? I know you guys are not going to like that, but what do you think?
Yeah,
our census center already links all of our electronic identification cards to themselves, because they are the certificate authority in Finland for identification. So, and I don't know how it goes with the idea that there should be some sort of a compensation to the third party that has verified your identity, and what is the value that's been transacted here. I'm not entirely sure about that, other than proving that you are you, but there is very little to be proven if you can't at least in any reasonable sense, you can't find enough probability that you are you, because identity fundamentally is about probability that you are you, and you get more about that when you show your passport, you show your ID, you show your electricity bill. These are just ways to increase the probability, not proving that you are you. That goes way beyond anything that can be done with any reasonable identification system. So yeah, I went a little bit randy there, but still, I'd like to hear your opinion, Niko, on what would be the value that's being transferred if we are talking about blockchain, and can a third party participate in it, and can the participant benefit from having proving other people's identities and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think there will be an application that tries to do just this. It will try to make things more efficient and more, I guess, immutable from the government side or the regulator side. That's, in my opinion, why they want to use blockchain. But it can be quite bad for the user, actually, because if there's no way for you to reliably remove yourself from the system, and of course that is the key, to have each and every person cataloged in the world. So to that I don't think blockchain is the correct tool to use, because I'm of course very concerned about the privacy and freedom of people. And oftentimes when these kinds of measures and these possibilities are put in place, they are it's only a matter of time before they are being abused. So sacrificing some, to gain some convenience today might mean your security in the future. So personally, I wouldn't be willing to gamble that. But I think I think there will be a system like this, and I think a lot of people will be participating, and I don't think it's going to end super well. And what you said, I think, was absolutely spot on and correct about there's almost, it's next to impossible to reliably ID somebody online. I think like maybe you would have to go as deep as blockchain, instead of blockchain, talk about DNA chains and stuff like that. To actually identify, and that's well beyond my scope of knowledge. But you guys feel free to comment, make quick comments on that. I'm going to check on the questions in the meanwhile, and then we're going to go to the audience questions.
Yeah, I don't think that idea on a blockchain makes too much sense. First of all, right, digital identity, you can at any time discard it. It's not really tied to your physical identity. And hopefully we are in a coming future of crypto anarchy with a lot of anonymity and privacy. But in my opinion, even worse is biometrics on a blockchain, because that just means that you link your physical body to a blockchain, and that incentivizes, for example, that someone cut off your thumb in order to get access to the blockchain. So just the game theory on it is completely flawed in many systems. No, I'm gonna stick to Bitcoin. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that sounded terrible, actually. I didn't think of it that way.
Well, you didn't bring up Demolition Man, so that's good.
Oh, nice! Another classic movie for my list. I need to rewatch that. So yeah, there was a really great question. This is funny because this question was not even, this was made by a person who was unaware that the show was going on right now in the other Telegram group. So, and it's also in Finnish, so I'm just going to translate here. So is it possible to use Bitcoin as a base layer to create a smart contract between IoT devices, thinking about considering a P2P energy sales system or energy trading system? It's a very interesting question because some of us here, I think actually almost everybody here except the other Aleksi is working on NX as well, and maybe Aleksi is working on that as well. I wouldn't know, but that's something certainly that everybody here probably has some kind of an opinion on. So let's hear those.
So the question was,
how can we use Bitcoin smart contract between IoT devices and hook it up with this kind of an energy trading system? So what I imagine how this would work is to let's say that we have a solar panel system like that is built by NX Solar that is generating electricity, maybe storing it using miners, storing it into cryptocurrencies, and then trading that for electricity from the grid when needed, something like that. And then maybe you could hook up to it drones that can deliver packages and stuff like that in the future, or smart cars or whatever. So do you think this Bitcoin will be suitable for IoT transactions, basically?
Well, the IoT devices there are usually a lot of them, and they communicate a lot. So the transaction speed would have to be very fast, I think.
The transaction speed is really here the critical part, and I do not know of a project that has a lot of transaction speed as a sidechain. Liquid has 1 minute block with a full finality after 2 minutes, so that is still rather low. But other than a sidechain, there is the Lightning Network. Bi-directional payment channels with a routing function enables a lot of cool stuff. Cool thing is especially because you can interlink these Internet of Things devices in a direct payment channel to maybe a hub that you control yourself. You have 0 transaction fees inside this payment channel. You only have transaction fees when you actually use the Lightning Network for routing. And that can be kind of batched or done from a central point that is not a IoT device, but rather a bigger server. So there are a lot of possibilities there. Regarding security, though, hardware wallets for Lightning is still a thing that is coming. It will be here, but still takes a while. And there are a lot of secrets and passwords and private keys in a Lightning network specifically. So you do have to have at least a storage mechanism and a computing mechanism for hashing and elliptic curve cryptography. So there are some physical requirements for the Lightning Network, but they are rather minimal. So I think it should be doable.
That's interesting. I didn't think it's doable, but maybe in the future. Well, more like the question is it doable or is it necessary? Let's hear from the other Aleksi as well.
Yeah, I don't think you can make anything trivial with a secure smart contract, as long as you don't transfer any value and you actually have some value to execute the smart contract with. I wouldn't put it aside the IoT device to be so insecure that you can actually extract the value from it that's accrued, because it probably has to go to the device itself, and then you have the private key there, and given how badly they are implemented at some instances, I wouldn't be surprised if there was an attack that basically someone drives around the neighborhood and collects all the private keys and then steals all the ether from the devices. So I don't think if it's something even remotely secure, I don't think it's possible yet. You have to use something else. For example, Streamer had a pretty interesting concept with their collation of the sensor data, and when they have collated enough data, they can then execute a smart contract. And regarding the energy, I actually have a comment on that, because you can't simply transmit energy into the network as is. That's what the power plants are doing, and all of the energy that you buy from your power company always comes from the nearest power plant anyways. I was in the Fortum hackathon where this was explained pretty well, that if it's the nearest power station you have, if it's coal or if it's nuclear, it's the nearest, you're going to get the electricity from it. And now if you're going to yell that all the power companies are scammers, you are incorrect, because when you are making a contract with your power company about using solar energy, for example, you are actually making they are making a contract on your behalf to buy more solar energy with the money you are giving to them. So they are not lying in any sense, and at least in that point. I'm not sure about the others. So in that sense, gathering electricity from power panels, I wouldn't say, I can't really say that it's going to be anything trivial. You have to work out quite a lot of things in the power network of the block or the house you are in. So that's going to be a little bit challenging.
Yeah, I don't think at this point any kind of blockchain development is trivial. I think it's all groundbreaking. Pretty much what we're trying to solve here. So big, huge problems, and something like solar energy and making it available for everybody. And yeah, those are obviously the kind of scope of problems that will take time and trial and error to solve. But regardless, it's an interesting thing to develop and think. And there's a couple other things that I wanted to talk about. I think we should travel towards the end of the show. So think about what are the things that you still want to discuss. And if you're still watching here, we have 8 live viewers. Hit the likes and subscription buttons. And there was actually a question about Arla chain, which is a milk maker from Sweden. And this was a funny news we had. Almost for me it seems like a joke, but of course it's clever marketing, and again we are using blockchain as the savior here, and it's going to let us know where the milk came from and where is it going, and the blockchain of course to the rescue here. So guys, have you heard about Arla chain, and any commentary on that before I give my snarky remarks?
Perfect. We need to have a clear distinction between cows, milks, and tokens. So it's a great idea, no issues. They should ICO that, absolutely.
Yeah, I think there's the problem that Max mentioned, that okay, you can use a blockchain to track this, but how do you verify that they're inserted correctly into the blockchain? So, I don't know. Sounds like a weird project for me.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it, but I think it's one of those IBM chains, as far as I remember correctly. And I don't know if this is a family-friendly show, but I won't say anything else about that. So,
Yeah, the problem is with like IBM or anyone enterprise blockchain things that do you really need enterprise blockchains?
Right. I feel like that is a very disregarded question, especially with end users. Like, how does an end user benefit from big companies developing their intranets? Basically, what those permissioned chains are, right? I mean, they are meant for companies' internal messaging, and maybe big companies can share some information with each other, but how is that going to benefit the end user? How is that going to benefit you and me? And then I think that's the kind of question that also I would urge people to ask when you're thinking about if a project is sound, or if it's an interesting project, and how does it benefit you directly, you know, instead of just trying to think what is going to be the next thing and what the project is going to move. It might be a more sound strategy to actually try to think if the project is going to solve a real world problem, a real, what I like to say, a hair on fire problem. Like a lot of these things the projects are proposing to solve are maybe something that, yeah, it's a neat idea, but is it really some issue that needs solving? And I think we should focus on those projects first. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
how should we prioritize the development?
Yeah, I think it's always critical to an actual user need or some need, not just develop a solution and wish that it would be used, or like just because you can do it. It's
or even worse, try to convince people that it's usable.
Like just because you can do it doesn't always mean that you should do it. Like really think about those from the user's perspective of what is needed. How would blockchain or Bitcoin fit in, or tokens or anything fit into their lives? Or that's what my opinion at least.
yeah, agreed. And also, I have really been missing some details about these projects. What are they using? What sensors are they using to communicate with the blockchain? How are they going to communicate with the blockchain? Are they using some computers in the harbor or in the dairy farm? Do they use something in the trucks? That's really something that I would really like to see myself before I believe these things. Of course, there can be lots of benefits if you can have a immutable decentralized system for this. That's great. I would really like to see some real details on these. Of course, it might be some sort of a trade secret or an NDA agreement between IBM and the customer, but I think a lot more information needs to be heard in the public before I can say anything cool about this. For example, Ambrosus is a similar provider that wants to verify the supply chain purity or the transactions between the participants in the supply chain. So that's at least something that works on Ethereum, and we actually had a presentation back in April about that. So it was quite an interesting project. But more details, IBM, please.
Yeah, regarding development, that's always difficult, right? When do we develop what and who pays for it? And the ethos of open source development is, of course, scratch your own itch and do the stuff that you think that you need for your own self and that you think is valuable for the community at large. And when everyone does that, well, then we have some kind of resemblance of a useful product at the end, because at least the developers like to use it. But it's not just the developers, of course, it's you, the user, as well. So you should be active and give feedback and all that good stuff, because that gives the opportunity for developers to actually apply all the stuff that you want to have. And again, beautiful thing of open source is that it is open, right? One can give code contributions or just feedback in general, even if you're not a coder. So any support is, as always, gladly welcome.
Yeah, as a product developer, the most pain for me is to actually spend time on creating product or features that are not used. So it's great to have feedback on what is needed and so on.
Yeah, it would be terrible to be the guy who spend a year working on a ladder with no spokes, and then it will be useful for anybody. So yeah, I wanted to run one more thing by you. I don't want to drag this show on too long, but since I got really inspired by this, I started reading on it just today. It's called Mimblewimble, and the first time I heard about this was probably earlier this year, but I've been avoiding the topic, and I just started reading it, and I think it's like super interesting. But I don't know enough about it to make like full commentary on that. So what do you guys think? Have you looked at that? And what, like, it's a privacy thing, but what are the true implications of this technology?
Well, in my opinion, the coolest thing about Mimblewimble is the badassery that it was dropped. A complete random account called Tom Elvis Redusor was registered on some open forum, and he simply dropped a torrent that linked to the PDF file with the white paper, and then he disappeared again. So true black magic, true cipher anarchy. And a really cool thing about Mimblewimble is that it gets rid of all the spent transaction outputs. So it is still a UTXO-based set of transactions, but because of some fancy cryptography and black magic mathematics, it allows that if you spend a coin, a output, then you can both delete this input and the output. They cancel each other out. So in that way, when a new node enters the blockchain, enters the network, in Bitcoin, the full node would have to query all transactions from Genesis till block 540,000. And with Mimblewimble, it would only be some teeny tiny bloat for every transaction that has happened, but basically only the set of unspent transaction outputs. So a new participant in the network would be much faster syncing and verifying the blockchain. However, the privacy implications are a bit hindered, because if you are there from block 1, if you see the entire transactions happening, you still get a full transaction history. So it's not as privacy focused as it might seem, but the cool thing is that it is much easier for new nodes to enter the network.
Oh, you really did some research on that. That's really interesting. I really like that. What about Aleksis? Have you guys looked at that? Mimblewimble protocol?
I heard the name, sounded quite funny, but haven't looked into it. Actually, I heard it already like 2 years ago or something.
Yeah, it's just that it pops up every now and then, and now I feel like the frequency of me hearing it has become unbearable, so I have to look into it. Go ahead, Alex.
So there's this sub-chapter title for tongue tying for everyone. So I just started to read that one, and okay, well, let's see.
Well, that is what Mimblewimble is. It is a spell from Harry Potter, and it just ties up tongues. And the main argument provided why this name was chosen is that it ties up the tongue of the blockchain and makes it more private, so the blockchain cannot speak about the transaction history. So quite interesting. And the cool thing is that most of the developers now working on Grin, which is one implementation of a Mimblewimble-like blockchain, they all now have pseudonyms according to Harry Potter. So we got a bunch of wizards and magicians working on it now, which is good.
Just when I thought that this couldn't get any more nerdy.
Well, and I can especially appreciate that, because most of the companies that I've started so far are named because of or after Harry Potter spells. So I do think these names are quite nice, and just like Mimblewimble, it's just cool and it's unforgettable.
Yeah, I would agree. It's pretty cool. I was never much into Harry Potter though, but I am a nerd, so yeah, I can appreciate that. So I think we're gonna take it towards the end now, to give the audience a little bit of a chance to write the final questions here, and also, dear panelists, maybe consider your final words. What kind of mood you want to leave our viewers with? We still have 11 people with us live, which is great, which is fantastic. We really appreciate that. And if you've been liking what we have to say here, please do like it, and drop us some questions, and tune in every Monday, 4 p.m. UTC. And yeah, I think we have a couple questions about Mimblewimble, or comments rather, and of course it's by Raphael, who is our avid co-host today. He was unable to join, so he's just trolling in the chat, which we all appreciate. Thank you, Raphael. So Mimblewimble, love the tech, not impressed in the current coin projects from ideological and economical side, Beam and Grin. That's interesting. We need to talk about that a little bit more. And also, Mimblewimble white paper was created by some with a nickname Tom Elvis Jedosar. I assume this is a Harry Potter name. I wouldn't know, which is Voldemort's real name in French Harry Potter books. Oh well, there you go. So Beam and Grin, I've only heard of these. Apparently, there's some kind of an ideological or economical clash. Maybe Max, have some commentary on this, and then go into your final words, and where can people find more about you?
I'm honest, I do not know too much about Beam, but I know a little bit about Grin, and basically it has a never-ending emission tail of, I do think it's 50 new Grin every block. And this means that the amount of currency issued with every block is the same and does not have like a Bitcoin. So the money supply of Grin is endless, infinite. But because the already existing money in allocation gets bigger and bigger, And because the flow, the new currency that is being added to the stock is quite small, the so-called stock-to-flow ratio, as Saifedean likes to call it in his book, The Bitcoin Standard, go out and read it, is decreasing. So it is a somewhat sound money with some good implementations, but it is not as perfect as Bitcoin in that sense. But well, it's a science project, and let's see where it takes us. I'm sure we can do the implementation in the sidechain as well, so I'm really looking forward to that. Piers, it was as always a pleasure joining you here on Konsensus, and I'm really looking forward to the upcoming videos and here on the channel. Unfortunately, I do have to go though, right over to the World Crypto Network, where I will talk, and you get a spoiler now, with the GoTenna guys, talking about mesh networks and how to truly decentralize your communication and information sharing. This is going to be the first part of hopefully several videos, not just about the GoTenna mesh, but also TX-Tenna. So how you can send Bitcoin transactions over this mesh network, which is going to be amazing. So I'm really looking forward to that. Please join me there on the Konsensus, on the World Crypto Network. And as always, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
See you, Max. Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
As you guys heard, GoTenna, that's an awesome product, and I'm definitely gonna tune in after this, and I think all of you guys should tune in, because it's an awesome product. I really got into this idea of building your own mesh network for transmitting whatever transactions or whatever messages for that matter. I think one of those little antenna things has like 5 kilometer radius, so actually it wouldn't be that difficult to create some kind of a sneaker net. So yeah, that's a really interesting project. And what do you guys think? And while you give your comments on GoTenna, give your final words, and where can people find more about you guys?
Yeah, maybe if I start. Yeah, sounds like an interesting idea, a mesh network to truly decentralize the last bits. An interesting idea, yeah. Actually, my final words would be more of a question to the audience. Like, what kind of development-related content would the audience like to see? Would it be like tutorial videos on how to create smart contracts or dApps, or there are plenty of those already, but I think we can do them also? Or would the audience like to see, like, we discuss about the project like Ethereum and weigh its pros and cons and everything? Or yeah, it's a question to the audience. If we're gonna have a development related show, what kind of content would you like to see? And yeah, thanks for having me here, Niko, again on the Konsensus Network. And you can find more information about me and my projects. Check out my Twitter, twitter.com/mindy, or go to the weconomy.io website. You can also find my contact information there. Yeah, that's my final words. Thank you.
Awesome, Aleksi. Thank you so much for joining and chipping in with your expertise. And definitely, I'm looking forward to the audience letting us know what kind of things you want. As I said in the beginning, and I'm going to say that again now, just to emphasize it, we are planning to have this a more frequent development show, not necessarily always at this slot. So maybe there will be an infrequent slot whenever we have a topic, or you want to approach us with a topic. You can pitch it to us, and you can send us any of us direct messages, also in Telegram or in the Konsensus Telegram group. You can find the link in the description. Just come in there and talk about it, and I'm sure we'll take all the ideas that you have. And the most important thing is that we can provide valuable information for you guys. So really keep those messages coming and let us know what would you like to see and hear. All right, Aleksi why don't you give your final comments, and where can people find more about you?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me again. This has always, as always, this has been a great pleasure to discuss anything related to crypto and consensus. You can find me in the usual suspects of Twitter, and you can find me with the same nickname on quite many chat networks, Telegram, IRC, the Matrix. Anything goes. It's in the description, and please be sure if you want to comment on any ideas, leave a comment, because this video should be viewable later on, and I'll have Niko to watch over those comments like a hawk, and then we can brainstorm around the ideas of the development show. And I think this is one of the important aspects of the entire technology is to learn how the technology works. And we have had quite many good discussions and topics so far. And now to get really into the meat of things I'm really looking forward to this one. So, and I really look forward to also be part of this with the technical expertise that I have. So thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, and we appreciate it greatly because, yeah, like I always say, I'm a generalist and my knowledge on any set of topics is limited. So that's why I try to get all you guys to help me here. And I do think we're getting a lot of good feedback, mainly good feedback. Actually, I haven't got a single bad feedback on the show so far. So that's pretty good. So thank you so much for both of you, Aleksis, to have being on my show many occasions, and I hope this continues to be the case as well. And yeah, we already got a comment from Raphael. So a critical review of decent projects. Well, I think that's something we could work on, a whole series of actually legit projects that we think are solving a useful problem. I think that's something also has been on my mind, and I think that's something good we could try to do. All right, we're gonna wrap it up here. Thank you, audience, so much for participating. We still have 8 people hanging on, so great job there, guys. Thank you for all the likes and all the love, and thank you for Max, who already had to leave, and the double Aleksi team, which is always a pleasure to do work with you guys. And myself, if you're interested in my personal views, you can find me on Twitter, Omnifin, double N at the end. Of course, in the Telegram, like I mentioned, you find our Telegram groups in the description. Please join in. The conversation there is wild every day. Like there's hundreds of messages and over different groups, multiple topics. We have a group for coding. We have one for trading. We have one for general. We have an off-topic one. We have an English one. Well, yeah, I have to mention some of those. Most of our groups are in Finnish at the moment, but we also have an English group. And as the demand increases, we will create more groups if need be. And there's one more thing that I wanted to talk about. It's a shill. We're going to have this Helsinki Blockchain Summit this coming November 21st and 22nd. And Konsensus is in charge of the program of the second day in Helsinki Hall. So that's a quarter of the summit is basically our program. It's going to be very interesting. I'm going to be talking about Starfish and Spider organizations there. Max is going to be talking about sound money. We have Henry Braid talking about hard money. We're going to have Mikko Alasara talking about artificial intelligence. We actually have Aleksi Meldo talking about economy. We have some other members also from the community. So it's going to be kind of like an interesting thing. And you got to understand, like, even though we talk basically a lot of crap about these blockchain projects that are not really solving any kinds of problems, and most of these events kind of like underline that. So it's going to be interesting to kind of have us there as well as these anarchists and voices of reason, I would like to say. Some people might disagree with me, but it's going to be interesting to see what kind of constructive disagreement we can reach there, because we are working together with Markus from Blockchain Forum, which is another association in Finland, which is more geared towards the needs of corporate blockchains. So this, to my knowledge, is the first big event that is going to have both distributed ledger technology people and Bitcoin maximalists under the same roof, trying to provide content. So that's going to be interesting. And you can use the code Konsensus 2018 to get some discount for the second day. I'm just going to drop it in the chat there. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it that we had here. Thank you for following, and we'll see you next week. And as I mentioned, do remember to give us some feedback. It's vital, and we try to make these shows better every time. And yeah, take care, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.